Hey everybody, I have some time in the middle of my Christmas day here to make an upload, and I've been reading about Fukushima, and boy, it is just an endless stream of bad news coming out of Japan. This is a story that just came out today: contaminated water leaking again from storage tanks at Fukushima plant. A TEPCO spokesman told a news conference Tuesday that around 225 tons of radioactive water have either leaked and or evaporated from the two storage tanks near the number 4 reactor. This news is just coming out kind of matter-of-factly now. Hey, today we just had another 225 tons that have disappeared. Where is the desperation in this situation? Here's another website. Deplorable conditions at Fukushima power plant. It says over 1,000 days after the disaster, and they are still cleaning up. 1,000 days after the disaster. I'm going to get into that in a second here. Here's another story that came out 3 days ago, I believe. Yet another record radiation level measured at Fukushima nuclear reactor number 2. And the kicker in this website is this sentence here. And this is the bullshit that TEPCO is still feeding you over 1,000 days or 2.5 years after the accident. It says this: TEPCO suggested that current numbers could be wrong because radioactive substances may have been mistakenly mixed during the process of getting the samples. That is unbelievable. Well, there is one major question that I have in my mind, and it has to do with learning from history. All of you have heard about Chernobyl, April of 1986, and these are just some pictures I found of the initial disaster. Here's one from a Soviet TV, and this nuclear reactor at Chernobyl was pretty much destroyed in an explosion. And here's just some good pictures of it and what it looked like shortly after. But anyway, here are some pictures I found of Fukushima. And this plant, after these explosions, looks more destroyed than Chernobyl did. And pictures don't lie. This plant has been totally destroyed, and any chance of getting the situation under control seems pretty helpless. And that brings me back to this one question. Why aren't they doing what the Russians did, and why haven't we learned from history? Here is one website that talks a little bit about it. It says Chernobyl Today. A large concrete shelter was erected quickly by October of 1986. So, about 4 or 5 months after the initial disaster, they had a large sarcophagus, or what they call it in this website, a large concrete shelter, erected by October 1986. And that is just, about five months after the disaster. On this website, it says this. And this talks about the Battle of Chernobyl, what the Russians actually had to do to get the situation under control, or at least as under control as humans can possibly get this situation. It says, nobody was prepared for such a crisis. For the next 7 months, this is important, 500,000 men will wage hand-to-hand combat with an invisible enemy. A ruthless battle that has gone unsung, which claimed thousands of unnamed and now almost forgotten heroes. Yet it is thanks to these men that the worst was avoided. A second explosion, 10 times more powerful than Hiroshima, which would have wiped out more than half of Europe. And I don't know about wiped out more than half of Europe, but it would have made more than half of Europe uninhabitable. This was kept secret for 20 years by the Soviets and the West alike. I have always been fascinated in the Chernobyl story, and I encourage anybody who's interested in the situation of Fukushima, and that should be everybody, to really watch this documentary, and it really goes over very well what really needs to happen to get a situation like this under control, and why the Japanese have not learned from this actual history is baffling to me. I think it's deplorable, unconscionable, and unforgivable. Now, the only thing that saved Europe, part of Europe and much of this area in the Ukraine from being uninhabitable was the Russians' quick, decisive action. Now, after just a few days of initial confusion on what to do, they sent in thousands of men. They sacrificed a lot of men's lives to get this done. They waged all-out warfare against their invisible enemy, and that's the only thing that saved their ass. Now, Japan, it's 2.5 years later. Why they haven't learned from this history is just baffling to me. It is absolutely baffling. Now, I'm going to take you over to Google Earth here. We are going to zoom in on Chernobyl Power Plant. And simply, I just want to show you. I just want to show you what the Russians did. This area here in the middle is where the reactor used to be. They built this massive concrete tomb over it, and that allowed them to get the situation, at least temporarily, under control. And I guess by 2016, they are going to build something bigger and better over this to ensure that the situation doesn't get out of control again, because there's still, nuclear reaction going on under here, and this site is extremely radioactive still. And I just thought you'd be interested in seeing what Chernobyl looks like today and what the Russians actually did. Another reason why I'm fascinated with Chernobyl is, I found this story that kind of relates to it, is how this area is being reclaimed by nature just 28 years after the disaster. There has not been humans here to take care of stuff, and some of these pictures just show you how nature is overgrowing the city. And here you see trees growing everywhere. Just 28 years, some of these trees are already pretty big. And the forest is just kind of encroaching on the city. And if we go down further here, it shows you a picture of the reactor back in the day. And today, this is what it looks like from above. And you can see the forest just kind of covering up. Now, people ask, sometimes about where are the remnants of a civilization that maybe was on Earth 10,000 years ago? Well, this is just 28 years after the disaster at Chernobyl, and it's clear by these pictures you can see just 28 years later how much the forest has overgrown the area. A civilization 10,000 years ago, it's gone and it is buried. Now, another site I wanted to share with you was this one. This is called the Kidofspeed, and this is a gal named Elena, and she just takes her motorcycle through the Chernobyl area and has written about it and documented it. And I just wanted to share it because I really liked visiting this website and reading and checking out some of the pictures. I will leave the link below for all these websites I'm sharing with you. Here is a little bit of it, and I wanted to share one paragraph or one page from her story. And here from this picture, it looks like she's about a mile away from the reactor at Chernobyl. And this is what she says. This is entitled Atomic Plant. It says, usually on this leg of the journey, a beeping Geiger counter inspires one to shift into high gear and streak through the area with great haste. The patch of trees in front of me is called the red, or magic wood. In 1986, this wood glowed red with radiation. They cut them down and buried them under 1 meter of earth. The readings of the asphalt paving, where, depending on where you stand, is 50 to 300 times the radiation of a normal environment. If I step 10 meters forward, the Geiger counter will run off the scale. If I walk a few hundred meters towards the reactor, The radiation is 300,000 times normal. If I was to keep walking all the way to the reactor, I would glow in the dark tonight. Maybe this is why they call it magic wood. It is sort of magical when one walks in with biker's leather on and walks out like a knight in shining armor. So that really tells you, still today, how bad the situation is at Chernobyl, and these are situations that just don't go away. This place is still highly radioactive. It's a ghost town surrounding this area for miles, and it's fascinating when one can get in and document it. But I thought that was just a very fascinating read here, and some great pictures. I will leave the link below for all these websites. But this one I really enjoyed. I think this lady did a great job in documenting what this area is actually like today. And that was just a taste of it. Now, in conclusion, we have these two situations that are very similar. And here we have two pictures. Destroyed nuclear facilities. We have the Russians 25 years ago building the cement tomb, the sarcophagus, over the site to get their situation under control. They started working on it just weeks after the initial disaster. 6 months later, they had this thing completed, so it gave them, so they got the situation under control, at least for the time being. The situation did not go away, but at least radiation is not spewing over the countryside. And then in 2011, we have the thing at Fukushima happen, the tsunami, the ensuing explosions, and 1,000 days after, 2.5 years after, the Japanese are still playing the blame game. Nobody wants to take the situation by the balls and do what needs to be done, and that is to build a giant sarcophagus or entomb this area so radiation isn't pouring into the ocean and the countryside for longer than it already has. When the Japanese had the situation, it was new. It's a brand new situation for them, but they actually had history to learn from. And why they haven't learned from that is unbelievable, unforgivable. It makes me sick. It makes me sick how humans can just trash the earth, not just some pollution, but pollution that'll make it, unlivable in areas for centuries to come. The stupor that we're in, the arrogance, just the blasé attitude towards this is unbelievable. And the stupor that we're in of just not looking at the situation for what it is, and similar situation is going to be the ultimate cause of our demise. And, I don't want to be all doom and gloom, but it's really time for humans to just really research this and know what's going on and really have a concern for the earth. I don't know. Sorry to have such a gloomy upload. I hope you all are enjoying your Christmas. I just thought this was important information to share. Hope you all have a nice week. I'm going to let somebody else take you out of this.
If we don't rouse ourselves from this stupor, the momentum toward extinction is now practically irreversible. The Grateful Dead like to sing that song, "We need a miracle every day." We certainly do.